Roguelikes. For years, this type of genre confused me. I've brushed against these games multiple times, but never quite fully getting into it or even appreciating those types of games. To give some context, for most of my gaming journey, I would say it easily consisted of Nintendo games, tons from the fighting game genre, and so many hours into a couple of RPGs and some shooters, especially looter ones. I never really had any ideas or let alone cravings to get into a lot of these other genres. And as gaming evolved into what it is now, I don't even know exactly what it is now. It transformed into all of these subclasses of genres that felt so specific to certain communities. So I never really felt properly placed into any of them. For example, I don't really play any Souls-likes. I rarely will ever touch a horror game or strategy game for that matter, and MMOs just don't quite exist in my sphere of what interests me. So now, with all of that out of the way, what about the roguelike class of games that have kept me away from them, and why am I only starting today? In this video, I will be playing a couple of handpicked titles I semi-randomly chose based off of popularity, some diversity in the genre itself, and honestly, just what seems interesting to me. But before we heavily get into these games, and for first impressions, let's get back to the questions I asked earlier. What kept me hidden from these games? With roguelikes, I think my impressions were never based off of the games themselves, like quality or design-wise, but the type of people who play them, and if I could even compete with that said person. I've had my fears about my own accountability issues, and I honestly thought I couldn't back up my skill with the discipline it took to play these types of games. Normally in roguelikes, you start a run through the game, and when you die, it's over. You reset. But a roguelike often gives you a newer experience the next time you play, with the map or item layout, or of course your new knowledge of the game itself. And truthfully, that does sound awesome, but also very painful. Like an arcade game trying to get the highest score possible. But this time, I won't feel the same comfort hopping back in like a game like Galaga or Pac-Man. It scares me not knowing how I'll start or what items I'll get, or the fact that I might not get a certain item I love leaves me not tempted to play. Someone like me thrives off of similar playstyles, like in fighting games or classes in RPGs. Things like that are my bread and butter. They're in my control. In a roguelike, the only thing I have on me is my reaction time and my knowledge. It's an open-ended fortune of adaptability. So maybe I'm a little nervous to try out these games for my first experience in this new world, but I chose a classic title first that fans fell in love with and proved the industry wrong. I chose Binding of Isaac. The original Binding of Isaac has to be the strangest roguelike, and it's crazy that I can already tell. While this is really the first one I have dived into and put passion into, when deciding to do this video, I'm writing this from the perspective after playing all the games on my list. So currently I have tried the eras of the roguelikes, and I can tell and simultaneously love what the original Binding of Isaac does. Now this isn't the remaster or the rebirth, this is the original. It feels classic and almost like an older game than it actually is. But making this weird genre a staple at the time, it's grotesque yet oddly cute and charming, but challenging ways of gameplay, it's addicting. Filled with so much information to learn and think about, all this lore, amazing things. But the fun parts of Binding of Isaac that I found can also be its worst traits in my opinion, and detriment to lots of newer players. Isaac seems like the game in the genre to embrace adventurous and disciplined players from the get-go, while holding out that white surrender flag waiting for the amateurs to permanently log off. Binding of Isaac is a RNG dungeon-crawling roguelike shooter, similar to what the original Zelda felt like, if only it was dungeons and you had no idea what happened next. Where each door takes you, it's exciting. Each run in every single door really does keep you on your toes. Playing Isaac for the first couple hours felt so foreign to me. Obviously, I have no clue about any of the items, books, enemies, or the levels. It was fun though, but slightly overwhelming to a completely new and really casual player like myself. The first 3 to 5 hours were this constant confusion, all these unexplainable deaths and accidents, and just this overall shock factor. What does this item do? Or, wow, I didn't know this would blow up. Or, huh, I just walked into a room full of 10 enemies with no knowledge of how to beat them and run over. But as I progress and play more, I start to realize my progression is never on paper necessarily like I'm used to, but in my muscle memory, which is a new world for me to solely play a game like this. Almost happening to me, I can see new players dropping this after an hour or so, but pushing through this somehow turns this into an addictingly stressful and sometimes comforting game. Earlier I mentioned how the game was grotesque. It can sometimes be cute and charming, with certain uses of softer shapes and I guess silly-ish graphics is a way to explain it. I thought this was a game just about some worm underground fighting off other insects in a gross way. That's genuinely genuinely what I thought Binding of Isaac was before playing, for years, and how far of a stretch is that? But for those unaware, be warned, this game is more disturbing the deeper you go, more than I could ever imagine really. The more knowledge I gained of the controls and items is this weird balance of good and evil. The game plays off of morals and religion a lot, but then you slowly realize what's truly happening. And no, Isaac isn't a worm underground, but a child being abused in the basement essentially, which in hindsight seems obvious to the heavier fans of the series, and maybe it should have been more obvious for me at the start, but for a newcomer like me, this came as one of the most shocking realizations I've had in years of gaming. It's disgusting, disturbing really, and the better I get at the game, I'm almost left with a feeling of punishment and sorrow the more and more I learn. I valued the time I had at the beginning of this game when I wasn't subjected to this horror. I'm learning more and more every day, so maybe one day I will truly do a deep dive through the abnormalities of Isaac and the disturbing world he is forced to inhabit in. But Binding of Isaac, it was constant surprises. As my first real roguelike, it taught me a new level of patience in gaming that I'm so thankful for. So with that unlocked, I think we should play something a little bit modern. Balatro. It's only fair we went from what was essentially the OG of this genre to the most modern innovation. Balatro. I didn't really see people properly explain Balatro. It mostly boiled down to someone suggesting me to play it instead of overcomplicating it and possibly turning me down from trying it out. But after a couple months, I got around to actually investing a couple hours into this card roguelike, genuinely two styles of game I was honestly unfamiliar with before. But luckily growing up, I played a bit of card games with my dad and my brother, but normally it was sillier versions of poker or blackjack with not much risk. So going into Balatro, I was not only scared from trying out this fusion of the two gameplay genres, but also scared of how rusty I would be when it came to the card rules. Luckily, the base foundation is here, but the effects and additional things you can do to cards feel ever so expanding that I forgot entirely at one point that it all started with one simple deck. Balatro plays on combos, better than any other game I've seen like this. With its creativity and mesmerizing graphics, it changes up lots of formulas I previously knew, adding on multipliers and effects, powers to your decisions and cards, making this random card game what it is. Balatro. Balatro is playing poker hands for points, and you have to defeat these ever-growing bosses, which require a certain amount of points per round. Where the roguelike genre comes into play is really genius here too. Each round that passes, you get to unlock more and more types of cards. Joker cards are abilities you can have that do a multitude of fascinating things, often steering your strategy when it comes to your hand. There's one-use item cards, there's passive ability cards, tarot cards give you special effects. There are honestly tons of upgrades to discover, and so many can be mixed together in ways unheard of to where one game will never be the same. So you start a run, and each fight/boss acts as a round, so your goal is to keep pushing through rounds and rounds, each with this increasing difficulty, and every time upping the ante. It's honestly phenomenal. A game seemingly both so simple, but so complicated to master. It gives you this immersion of fiery combos and straight utter power. This roguelike makes me think like no other game. Trying to pull off the best hands and racking up chain effects on combos gives such a unique dopamine effect that I would argue it's a game everyone should play. Being on every single console pretty much and mobile, Balatro makes it to the ranks of genuinely what could be one of the greatest games ever made by one developer. The RNG and skill go hand in hand to Balatro, but never once did I feel like I got insane bad luck. It offers fair precision and a chance for anyone to have skill to risk it all and win big. Balatro is perfect. I think we deserve to get some time and dedicate this to Dead Cells, a beautiful 2D platformer still holding up as such amazingly detailed pixel art. It's a little bit of an older indie game at this point, I guess, but don't let that fool you. Out of the 3 games I've played today for this challenge, Dead Cells is the most challenging for me out of the entire bunch. Through playing Dead Cells, I kind of realized that I would have to invest quite a bit of love and training to not get better at the game mechanically, but invest into the genre of the game itself. Dead Cells, out of the other games I've played, is a roguelike, but this game introduced me to the capabilities of what's known as a roguelite. See, I thought Dead Cells would be interesting to talk about last year since it does mix its genres like this more than the other 2, I would say. If it was more roguelite than like, then maybe I wouldn't have included it necessarily, but going into the game, I genuinely thought it was fully a roguelike. The real difference between a roguelike and a roguelite is if anything carries over into a next run after death. Typically, roguelikes is randomly generated levels and permadeath, starting completely over from the start, while roguelites offers this either death or permanent aspect with that kind of randomness from a run, but allowing skills, levels, or maybe some kind of investment trickling over into the next run itself. It's essentially a roguelike with progression, which gets into this weird category of is this even a roguelike, or just an action game? But Dead Cells is interesting because it truly is the only indie game I've seen that is both somehow. Maybe I'm just wrong and I'm inexperienced with these genres, so let me know if there is anything similar. But I have played some roguelites games in the past. For example, Dave the Diver I think is one, which does offer these small missions that can be similar to runs but have progression with skills. That's more of what I would be used to. But Dead Cells offers that aggravation of permadeath, fully starting back over into the intro of the game. But after a couple hours of playing through that, I finally got into the roguelite aspects as well, unlocking the permanent investments for my playthrough and unlocking better items. So when I do reset back to the intro, I can start off maybe with a better broadsword or increased range damage with my bow, or even more health flask for that example. You are constantly using these points called cells to add on to these items and unlocks, which adds this nice rewarding constant sense of progression. You think this would make the game too easy at points, but I feel like it keeps you up to the difficulty to chip away at each better run. So with my low skills and lack of unlocks, it was super frustrating to defeat this first boss that I was fighting. But after a couple of deaths, I think 3 or 4 runs in, I got enough items and practice to kill my first boss fairly easily. I like how this plays out a lot. But also in this aspect, it was making me more raged than Balatro or Binding of Isaac for that matter, which is really strange with it having the actual progression and all. One trait I love about Dead Cells is the more you unlock and learn about the game, it changes your playstyle. You don't exactly have a sense of what the strongest is yet, so I found myself gravitating towards certain quirks quickly, like swords that offer critical hits more often, or any of the freezing items. So as you grow, it becomes this fun use of all of these items combined, but figuring out which works best on the certain enemies and levels and finding out your mechanical best. Dead Cells is fucking hard though. The rage that would swell up inside every time I got hit just hurt so bad, chipping away at my health. Getting a couple more levels deep, getting busted by a bomb that takes all of my health away one hit. The difference I found between Balatro and Isaac versus Dead Cells was its unpredictability like this. Where Dead Cells doesn't feel as unpredictable level and enemy wise, the combos on all the enemies is just super difficult. So when something slightly random happens, it becomes this whole show, this whole act of rage from me, blaming the game or some factor that I can't control. But in reality, I'm bad. I just need a little bit of practice. The level design itself is fairly fun, almost Metroidvania-esque, which I know I use too much. It's so much so to where they include portals throughout the level just so you can go around the map quicker. This can help you though, since the game times you the moment you hop into a level, and if you complete the level fast enough, it can unlock even more potential goodies. So everything here is so well designed in that factor. The swords especially have nice weights to them and can be comforting to use. Range attacks, bombs, grenades, random traps, abilities, they all feel essential in some way. Everything links together well. Whether it's to discover what you like in your playstyle or what's best for the next type of enemies, there's always something to go around. Dead Cells doesn't survive without its flaws though. It has a little bit of that old school gaming mistakes where new enemy types attack, potentially ruining your run just because its attack isn't quite obvious, but that can also just be the name of the game. That's just how the difficulty goes. This game has other flaws as well, but honestly nothing too detrimental to its love. It's all aspects combined to make a fantastic game that I can see non-roguelike fans getting hooked on more so than the other two games. Mechanically aside, it's simply so charming and offers this love letter aspect to even other indie games. Mentioning them in the game, which I found really cute, the small bits of dialogue or weird character designs is a nice quirk, and fun and bright costumes add this layer of depth that make the indie game last a lot longer than it does. Gives me so much to look at as well, and it's really a beautiful game in every capacity. So after playing some of the most popular roguelikes, after never playing any in my life, what did I learn? This genre is expansive and has this new reliancy on skillful knowledge that I've never experienced before in any games. Relying on the player to explore and learn and accepting to start over, it's kind of a fascinating concept. one that I wouldn't have thought that could work. Binding of Isaac taught me lots, with it being my first real impression into this world. The appreciation for absurdity goes a long way with this game. The RNG of Isaac makes it too random at times, almost being aggravating for the new learner, but learning the items and enemies and the bits of weird lore creates this depth for Isaac that is bigger than even good story games. Balatro taught me the enjoyment of risk versus reward, highly praising and rewarding me if I can pull off some of the risky moves that I thought of well. I love creating full combos and mixing Joker cards to create random strategies that have no business working. And while Dead Cells definitely taught me some patience, and that maybe dying and taking a step back can often be for the better, teaching me that dying is not losing any progress at all, like in traditional games, but actually it's how I gain progress in the first place, to reset. I feel like every stereotype I've learned throughout the years got flipped upside on its head when I started playing these games, but I'm glad to say that I've played these games, and it's added some much needed experience that will last with me for a long time. Funny enough, Balatro and Isaac has become a comfort game since then, which is nice, and maybe one day I will get good enough to beat Dead Cells. But Roguelikes at first glance had me in fear. Uncomfortable of the discipline and the unknown. It did help me face difficulty in a new form I've never participated in before yet, facing the world over and over again, but gradually learning and allowing myself to make mistakes just to learn something new, something maybe I need to try more in my life. This has been Rocks, peace and love, I'll see you.
Why is that? Why would it's stupid. Well, let me do it again.